Hello, everyone. This is Phil Yaeger, and welcome to my podcast, CPA Review and More. And today, I say that it is some CPA review, but it's also more than that. So, I have my guest today, Tom Lewis, and I must be honest and upfront. Tom was a student of ours in the Yaeger CPA Review course, and he passed the exam. And I'm not here to just praise the Yaeger CPA Review course, but I want to give you an idea of what it's like to study for the exam. And what makes Tom sort of unique is that he took the exam later on in life when he was 98, right? No, not 98, Tom, in his mid-40s, all right? And he wants, I figured, let someone else tell you in their mid-40s, because people say, hey, I'm in my mid-40s, I'm too old to take the CPA exam. I'll never pass, but Tom did pass, and I wanted him to share his what he did as far as studying, that type of thing. All right. Good morning, Tom. How are you?
Hi, Phil. Good morning, and thank you for having me today.
It's my pleasure, Tom. Thank you. And Tom, you were a student of the Yaeger CPA Review course, correct?
Correct.
All right. And is there now? One of the things that's very important is, first of all, you're studying for the CPA exam, is picking the right course. How did you decide to pick our course? And by the way, I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible. I don't want people to think that I'm here just to promote the Yaeger CPA Review course. How did you decide to take one course over another?
Great question. I think most people with the CPA review course, if there's not somebody they're working with recommending a specific company, they're starting with Google. So I started with Google.com, and Yaeger doesn't come up first. We know that. I mean, Yaeger's a smaller company. You're not paying millions of dollars in advertising fees. So I started doing free trials, and I looked at the bigger ones. I saw some things, and I was about ready to make a decision, but I had been reading some reviews and something told me, well, look at Yaeger. So I extended my search and I looked at Yaeger CPA Review. I did a free trial. I got to look at how the course is set up, the books. I read some things that people that seemed really knowledgeable and have some firsthand experience had written about that. And I decided to give Yaeger a try.
Now, a lot of testimonials that are online, okay, basically the internet is not controlled in any way. So how did you know that, for example, and our testimonials are truly testimonials, but, not all courses have actual testimonials. They could make it up and say anything they want. How could you tell that our testimonial was really truthful versus, ones that just, the courses might write themselves and say how great they are?
That's where I think you got to be really careful, because what I looked at is the companies that they have these sites and they review different CPA courses. I looked at that, but I kept in mind that they're all getting paid. So they're getting paid by different CPA review courses. But if I found consistencies in things they were saying, one thing I found very consistent among all these people, and even if there's a bigger company paying them a lot more money, is they said that Yaeger was extremely direct, extremely congruent with the blueprints.
Okay,
what's
good.
that?
Start again. You were froze for a second.
Okay. Yeah, extremely. Yaeger's. I found some very consistent things that the books were very easy to follow. So, like I said, even among, it's kind of like the news media. You hear a lot of things, but if you hear the same thing consistently, there's more likelihood that it's true.
Did you go totally on those? Those are affiliate marketers who are supposedly reviewing the classes. Did you find any, by comparing, did you find any inconsistencies on what they were saying versus what, for example, what I might have told you about the course? And, once again, they're being compensated based on the review courses. So the question is, how did you know that what they're saying is a truthful review versus, they're being compensated? So, maybe if they're compensated more by another course, they'll write something really even nicer about that course. Were you able to tell that some of those reviews might have been a little, not exactly truthful, where you knew that they were being compensated by the CPA review courses.
I got that idea. I got that idea when I put something in Google and it comes up first every time, and I hear all this great information that there's going to be this shortcut and I can cut my time in half of studying, and I tend to get suspicious. So I did feel that that was going on, and that's part of the reason this took so long to find a review course. I literally was doing this for about 6 or 7 weeks, looking at all the different review courses.
Now, what trial did you use? Did you use that 3-day trial? What trial did you use to see how our course worked?
Well, at the time, I believe it was more than a 3-day trial, because this was October, November 2019. So I think you were closer to a week at that point.
And you got free use of it. No one restricted you and say you got to just use this part or that part of the. In other words, we have the CPA, we have the cram course, we have the test bank. You had complete access to that, correct?
Yeah, I had definitely enough access to tell that to make a decision about the course.
Now, did you find a lot of the test banks? Did you look at any other test banks of other courses? All right, versus the Yaeger course?
Yeah, and I looked at various parts. A lot of them were pretty locked down, where you could get just a small piece of the course. Fair enough. Obviously, they don't want to give the whole course away, but I was able to make enough comparisons to say I was willing to give Yaeger a shot.
Because when we do our test bank, we don't necessarily have all the bells and whistles that the other courses have. We just have basically multiple choice questions, all right? And you can pick, a certain number, but we don't have all these bells and whistles, and supposedly we can tell you based on how you do on the multiple choice, whether you should take the exam now or not. That's a big thing now. That seems to be, all the courses come up with their gimmicks. And I always felt that our course was more or less just a straightforward course, study the material, all right, study the concepts, understand them, and then practice with multiple choice questions. And let me ask you, do you feel you needed hundreds and hundreds of multiple choice to practice with?
Not really. I think that was one thing I liked about Yaeger, was the multiple choice questions were geared toward the blueprints, I felt. And I think that they were strategically placed in such a way that if you got through those, you had a pretty good understanding of the blueprints if you can make it through all those multiple choice questions.
Because there are courses that say they have thousands of multiple choice questions, and also they recommend you do thousands of multiple choice questions. All right. And if you keep doing them over and over and over, you'll pass the exam. All right. You think that's the case, that you have to do, you do thousands of questions, and the more you do, the better chance you have of passing the exam? What do you think of that statement?
It definitely not an approach I wanted to try. I think that somebody could do thousands of multiple choice questions, and if they really were to dig into why each one was wrong, they might be able to. That would be kind of a backwards way of studying that I wouldn't want to pick at this point. I think people get sold on that because they think it's a shortcut. They think, okay, well, I don't have to study the material, I don't have to read the book, I don't have to listen to lectures. And maybe if you would have caught me 15 years ago, I might have been more into that type of wanting to seek out that type of shortcut. But I just don't see I don't see there being any shortcuts to this.
How did you prepare yourself for the task-based simulations? When you took the exam, did they have the task-based simulations?
Yeah. I think that going through, so yeah, you had, 8 of them on FAR and 8 on audit, and BC had 4 and 3 written communications, and I believe regulation had, 8, if I'm remembering correct here. But with those simulations, I think once you through the material and you understand it, and Yaeger has some simulations, and also the AICPA practice test helped a lot there.
Well, once again, as a review course, we're competing against these other courses who, once again, claim they have thousands or hundreds of task-based simulations to practice with. All right. Why didn't you take a course that had more task-based simulations to practice with?
It- Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, I wonder if you told me that you had a FAR course with 500 task-based simulations and 5,000 multiple choice questions, would I even make it through those?
That's true,
Yeah,
but
I mean, at the
also,
end of the day, there's only so much time, and you've got to gain an understanding of the material, because you get to the exam, they're not going to ask you a simulation that you saw in a review course. You don't know what they're going to ask you.
would you say that you studied the blueprints, right?
Yeah.
All right, and they are integrated in our books. By studying the blueprints and the text material, did you come across any areas on the different parts of the exam that were not stated in the blueprints?
That was one thing I like about the blueprint approach is after taking 4 tests, there was never a point where I looked at anything, a multiple choice question or a simulation, and said, I don't know what they're talking about or what they're asking. I had a pretty good idea on everything. There was one simulation on BEC where to this day, I'm not sure where they were going with it, but that's, one simulation out of between the 4 of them, like 31. I'm not sure where they were going with it. I still passed with a pretty decent score. So, but other than that, I never had
All right,
that.
let's start. You were frozen during that whole segment, okay? It says my internet connection is unstable. I don't know how that happens, but anyway. All right, start again with the question I asked you about this. I guess I asked you, did you find that there was anything on the exam that was not, I think that was the question I asked you. Was there anything on the exam that was not the blueprints?
Yeah, like I said, going to the exams, I never felt surprised by any simulation or multiple choice question. Out of, like I said, hundreds of multiple choice questions and I think 31 simulations. There was one simulation on BEC where I'm not sure where they were going on it. But other than that, I never had that feeling on any of the tests. I felt like I was pretty well prepared for whatever they put there.
What was when you finished going through your initial studying, okay, watching the videos, doing the multiple choice in the back of the books, I guess, and the test bank, all right? What did you do as a final review before you went in there?
And this is one thing that's helped me a little bit older in life, being a little bit more established job wise. I actually took a week off of work for most of the tests. And one of the final things I would do is I'd go through the multiple choice in the Yaeger books. In some cases, I would reread the books, or I went through the cram course right before that week off. I would usually just keep reviewing between simulations, multiple choice, things in the books, notes, whatever it took to feel I had a really good understanding of everything.
How'd you use the cram course to determine what you should go over again?
Well, a cram course is really good because I'd gone through the books, I'd gone through multiple choice, I'd gone through simulation, and these video lectures, they're through 2-3 months ago, sometimes even more than that. The cram course, now you've got a course with half the time. You can go through it in, maybe 3 or 4 days. It gives you a really good idea of here's refreshing everything 9 days before the exam. So, that's kind of how I used it. I watched it again, 9 to 10 days. I started about 10 days before the exam and finished it in some cases 6 or 7 days before the exam. So once again, all that material is really fresh again.
If you didn't use the cram course at the end, if you went through everything, you think you still would have passed the exam?
I think I would have still passed regulation and business environment and concepts. I wouldn't have had as high of a score. Probably not with audit, and it probably would have been on the border with FAR.
Did you, when you did the cram, did you go through the cram and say, I know this area, but I'm not good on that area? And then did you go back to those specific areas and study them more? Is that the way you used the cram, or did you just watch the cram and you wanted to see what areas you were weak on and basically spend more time on them? I'm not sure. What did you use the cram for? Obviously, it's a review at the end. It covers the concepts. We don't really do questions, all right? When you finish the cram, all right, were you able to determine what areas you need to go back and really go and look at again?
Yeah, I guess I'd say D, all the above on that. So it was a review. It triggered the memory. And it also directed me back to some other areas. I mean, especially far just it goes on forever, So there I had to you forget what you forgot with far. So that definitely helped with it was very helpful with far.
When you came out of the different parts, did you feel you had passed them, or you weren't sure, or did you come out like everyone else and say, gee, I failed that part, I failed that part? What was your feeling after you came out?
Yeah, I actually, and this is something you probably haven't heard from a lot of students before. I would text myself the score that I thought I got after I left the test. So in every score, every test I felt I passed, and my text upon leaving was within 1 to 3 points every time. So
you walked out, and so in other words, you walked out, you looked at that approach and you said, I think I passed that part. Is that the way you did it?
yeah,
Or are you still unsure? I guess that's the question.
I left far. I thought there was a 90% chance that I passed it. I texted myself my score when it was released. It was within 3 points of that. The only one that was close was I thought there was a 60% chance that I passed audit, and audit was even closer. But I felt that there was a 90% chance I passed BEC, and with regulation, I thought there was a 99% chance that I passed it.
To pass the auditing part of the exam, okay, all right, did you ever work in public accounting?
I worked as a tax specialist with a financial planning company, and we had relationships with some accounting firms, and I did work for a couple months here and there at those accounting firms, but not very much public accounting.
Can you pass the auditing part of the exam without being in public accounting?
Yes.
Now, back then, what was your requirement though to get the license? What was the experience requirement?
Are you talking about my requirement? And because I was just licensed in Michigan about 6 weeks ago. So
Oh, really? Okay. So all right, what's Michigan's experience requirement once you pass the exam? You have to work in a public accounting firm? What's the experience requirement?
2,000 hours of experience, and they've actually broadened it. They broadened it in 2010 where it can be tax preparation. They call it general industry experience, audit, things like that. So it's 2,000 hours within a 5-year period.
You don't have to work in a public accounting firm?
You don't have to work in a public accounting firm.
Is that still the case today as we speak?
Yeah, that's still the case. Like I said, at one point you used to have the actual audit, that type of audit, financial statement audit, but in 2010 they changed the law on that, and you no longer need that.
Because I was under the belief that most states follow the same experience requirement, namely, you have to work 1 year in a public accounting firm, all right, doing audits, that type of thing, or you can work in a non-CPA firm, all right, but you have to have a CPA who's willing to sign off on your experience, all right?
Yeah, Michigan does have that. A CPA had to sign off on my experience, a license.
Is that what a CPA did on yours?
Yes.
Okay, so how did you convince, who's the CPA, because I know that thing says under the penalties of perjury, okay, all right, did that scare someone signing off? How did you get someone to sign off on that?
Well, I had really good documentation of a project that I'd worked on, and all the hours were logged in a database. So, and I actually had about 3,000 hours within a 4-year period of time on this. So they felt it was a pretty open and shut case, I think, and I don't think they had any worries there.
You had one person who signed off,
Yeah.
only one person who could attest to those 3,000 hours that you worked on a certain project?
Yes.
Now, you work for a government agency, federal government, correct?
A state government.
State government. And is it hard to find someone in a state government who is a CPA who will attest to your 1 year of working, you have the knowledge of an accountant, just like a CP, I'm sorry, let me repeat that. You found a person to sign off, correct? All right.
Correct.
Did you find a problem finding someone to sign off on this?
That's a really good question, because when I started 10 years ago, somebody that hired in the same day as me, pass the CPA exam within a few months, and they had trouble finding somebody. But in the past, I'd say 8 or 9 years, a lot more people have become licensed. So I actually had a couple different choices this time.
There, I believe the experience requirement today with the 1 year working in public accounting or getting someone to sign off on the work you do, they're finding it very hard. A lot of people are finding it hard to get the experience requirement, all right, because they can't find a CPA who's willing to sign off. You know, if they don't work in a public accounting firm for a year, they're finding a lot of trouble getting people to sign off on this. And a lot of students, you know, they go through the 5 year thing now, or you don't have to get a master's program, but it's 5 years of, you know, of college. They come out, do the 5 years, and then all of a sudden now they got to go find someone to sign off if they don't work in public accounting. What do you think of that? I mean, you think that's turning people off? Are they the state boards? Are they making it too difficult to get the CPA license?
That's probably the case in some states. I didn't think it was bad in Michigan, and I think there's a lot of employers that'd be willing to work with someone here. From that part, I haven't experienced that much of that side.
Now, you work now for state and local government, correct?
Correct.
Right. And are you doing state and local government accounting? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
All right. And prior to that, you were a tax specialist in a financial planning company?
Correct.
All right. So the question is, all right, why did you leave? Which of the, obviously of the two areas you've been in, you enjoy state, local government more than a tax specialist in financial planning. Is that correct? Or am I putting?
Well, you know, my heart would be more in that line of work, but I kind of liked working 8 to 5 better than 8 to midnight, especially during tax season. Having met my wife, wanted to get married, have a child, this situation works a lot better for that. I really did enjoy the private sector, though.
As a tax specialist in a financial planning company, you had to work long hours?
Yeah, very long hours, because in addition to doing all the tax returns, we were doing tax planning. So we're meeting with people all summer, trying to make decisions that they could still kind of impact their tax return. Like in July, you know, once the tax season's over with, the tax return is a pretty historic document. But if you start working on that January 1st of the year it's going to be filed, it's a little different, you know, because you're making decisions and you're doing things with your investments, with your business, or things like that.
So really, the company just did financial planning. They were not a CPA firm doing financial planning. All right, they were a financial planning company, correct?
Yeah, they were a financial planning company, but I worked for a tax planning company, which is under the same umbrella. So you have a group, and then under that group, you had a financial planning company and a tax planning company.
So let me understand. This was a CPA firm that had a financial planning department. Is that what it was?
No, this was a financial planning company. I worked for a tax planning company that was under the same umbrella. You know how you have a group of companies?
Yes, yes.
But I actually worked for the tax and business company.
So, you know, there's a certification for financial planning, a CFP, okay?
Right.
All right. Is there a reason you didn't go for the CFP, or do you have a CFP?
Well, they tried to split those. So when you're on the financial planning side, you're licensed with a Series 7, a Series 6, life accident and health, maybe a Series 24, and the certifications that follow that are the Chartered Financial Consultant and the Certified Financial Planner. Being on the tax side, I was an enrolled agent looking to maybe become a CPA. So we kept those separate most of the time.
You really didn't have to become an enrolled agent, though. I mean, you could have just passed the CPA exam, because, I mean, what's the advantage of having an enrolled agent and the CPA? Is there any duplication there?
I think that, you know, I was an enrolled agent back in I took the exam back in 2005, became an enrolled agent in 2006. It was way easier to do that than I wouldn't have had all the requirements to be a CPA at that point. So I think it was a good start and I got a lot of mileage out of it. I plan to keep both designations just because I think there's some degree of specialization there. I mean, you can meet a lot of CPAs and they couldn't tell you much about taxes. I mean, they can tell you about Roth conversions, like if I wanted to go back into the planning end, or they couldn't tell you a lot about, corporations and basis. And I think the EA, it gives you a little bit of a distinction that way.
I've looked at the EA exam, and I think their questions on taxes seem harder than the ones on the CPA exam.
I thought they were. Yeah, I think, I mean, when I took the test, it was an 11-hour test over
11
2 days.
hours? Wow.
11 hours over 2 days administered by the IRS. Now it's Thompson Prometric and you take it in 3 parts, but it wasn't like that before. So it was given in a similar way to the CPA exam back then.
So if you are an enrolled agent, would you recommend, if you can meet the requirements to take the CPA exam, that you should also have the CPA designation with the enrolled agent? Or can you just get by with the enrolled agent?
Well, that's a really good question, because part of what inspired me to become a CPA was I remember meeting clients. I remember meeting one client. I had just passed the enrolled agent exam, 11-hour test over 2 days. I'd been studying tax planning strategies. I met her. I came up with a bunch of good ideas from her situation. And we got done, and her first question was, "Are you a CPA?" And when we started talking, and I tried to ask her, what she thought of the CPA designation, and she said she didn't know what it was. She said, "I don't know what it is. I know you have to have it." So I think there's this belief out there that even people this is a business owner that makes a lot of money, that's pretty successful, and they just see that CPA designation in a different light.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because there's a shortage of CPAs, all right? The number of people taking the CPA exam has dropped tremendously. And I'm wondering, maybe people don't know what the CPA does, all right? When I graduated college, everyone said, "Oh, you got to go take the CPA. It's an academic exam. You're just out of school." Now, we didn't have a shortage back then. I mean, we had so many people taking the exam, and that was because there was no 150-hour rule. The experience requirement, well, in Maryland, there's no experience requirement back then. Now there is. But I'm wondering if maybe people don't really know what a CPA does. And all they think about is he's a pencil pusher doing bookkeeping. Okay. All right. And maybe that, it comes up in different meetings that I've gone to. Why are less people taking the CPA exam? Okay. Is it just the generation that's coming out of school, or is there some other reason? Now, I never really hear what the reason is. Because they actually, this is a course providers. We go to meetings with the CPA examination division, all right, twice a year, and they ask any suggestions on how we can get people to take the CPA exam, because there is a shortage, and actually the number of people taking it is dropping. All right, so would you say that maybe first of all, ask this: why do you think the number of people taking the exam might be dropping?
I'm not sure on that. I wonder if it could have something to do with it's a pretty hard path, and there's a lot of other paths you can go through and probably make, if you're trying to make a lot of money, you can probably do that pretty quickly. So some people come out of college, with different IT fields, and they're already making a 6-figure income. I could see something. I could see that being having an impact.
Yeah, I tell you, I think I agree with you on that, because people coming out of college, they majored in finance, all right, or IT, and they don't have to go for a 5th year of a college, all right? Yep. And the starting salaries are so much higher than a an accountant going into a CPA firm, that type of thing. I think people are, materialistic, however you put it. Hey, I want to come out and I want to make as much money as I can. All right. I think it's very idealistic to think, hey, I'm going to major in accounting, and I don't care if my starting salary is 20,000 less. I is still going to get that CPA designation. I don't think that's the case. I think it has to do with beginning salaries.
Yeah, well, and back to what you were saying earlier on whether I'd recommend someone pursuing it if they're already an EA. When I don't know if you remember when the whole economy collapsed in 2008, we had the Great Recession, 2009. During that time, I was trying to get into a mid-sized regional accounting firm. So they're probably the 15th biggest in the United States. And I talked to the recruiter. She said, your resume looks really good, but you're not a CPA right now because there's so many people looking for work. And keep in mind, Michigan had been in a single state recession for 6 or 7 years. And then the Great Recession hit. And she said, all I can hire now is CPA. She said, that'll probably be different in a couple of years. But that was and that's 2009, 2010. So that's 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. But that's what I was told by a recruiter at a pretty prominent accounting firm.
But how was the starting salaries? I don't know if you had a basis of comparison, being a CPA or not being a CPA. Did it pay from a financial situation to become the CPA? All right. Now, obviously, in that case, you had to be a CPA. There was no choice. All right. But still, there is still a shortage.
Yeah, I think as far as it paying, it probably doesn't pay on day one, but I think 5-10 years down the road is when it really pays.
Yeah, and actually during the Great Recession, okay, they were laying off finance majors. Okay, all right, they were hiring CPAs instead of finance majors, and I think during a good economy, all right, yes, finance people get jobs as financial analysts, whatever. All right. But the minute the economy turns, goes downhill, all right, then they want to get the CPAs on board to try to determine what the problems are. All right. But right now, supposedly we're in a strong economy. All right. And they just don't want to do accounting. I don't know. I think it may have to do with the fact that they really don't know what the CPA does. Maybe they want something. IT sounds sexier. Is that it? Finance sounds sexier. All right. Being an accountant, it's got a negative image. By the way, I'm just curious. You majored in what when you graduated? Well, when you were in college, what'd you major in?
Economics.
Economics. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you get? Would you have to go back for another degree or?
Yeah, it was kind of a backwards path that I got into accounting. I was helping some coworkers with tax returns, and I really liked doing tax returns. I ended up going to a tax school of a tax prep company, and I really liked it. Then I went back to a community college. And they had a program that specifically works with people with bachelor's degrees. A very good program. In that process, that's when I got even more interested in tax. I became an enrolled agent. The CPA, it was a goal. So this is 2005, 2006 when I finished this. I did become an EA, and like I said, the CPA got set aside until, like I said, the last year or two.
You told me that you were in your mid-40s before you took the CPA exam. Is that correct?
Correct.
Why did you wait so long?
Well, the mid 44 is the new 37 and a half, though.
I heard 36.
36, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, if you Google midlife crisis, you see all these things like getting a sports car or a motorcycle, and those, they're all expensive. Pursuing the CPA exam, it seems a little bit better. But, it goes back to kind of what I was saying, the experience with clients wanting to hire a CPA, the experience with a recruiter, telling me your resume looks great, but you're not a CPA. Fast forward a little bit, I work in a governmental position. I'm watching people that have a CPA and doors are opening for, maybe it's a position. I notice a lot of the people at the top are, and it was this bucket list idea, or bucket list goal. I hit mid 40s, had a kid at 42, saying, so that was kind of,
did your wife have anything to do with that also? You said
yeah. Well, she's a few months older than me, so she had a kid at, a little older form of 42.
Okay, all right.
So here I am, I've got a kid. A year later, I've got two parents. One has health problems. My mom has a stroke a year later. A year after that, she recovered from it real well. And I thought to myself, okay, here I am, 44 years old. When's this going to happen? And I realized with my daughter I'm extremely involved with her life, with her being 2 years old, that she went to bed at 8:30 every night and slept all night. So I'm a night owl. I study at night. So I realized I can study from 8:30 on most of the nights. Like I said, my mom had done really well coming on stroke, and it seemed like a good time.
Uh, how did you determine? All right. So you were 42 or so when you took the exam. How old were you when you actually took the exam?
When I actually took this, so I started studying at 44. And when I actually took the exam, the first one I was 45. So it spanned, I took three of them when I was 45 and one of them when I was 46.
And during that period that you were not a CPA, had you started working in the state and local government, or were you still with that financial planning?
I've been there for about 10 years, and this is all in the last couple of years. So yeah, I had been with it working a governmental position.
It sounds like you enjoyed financial planning more because you like talking to people. And do you have that now as an employee in a state and local government? I mean, are you really dealing with people, or you basically work on your own? You see what my question is?
Yeah, actually, really good question, and the answer is once again all the above. I do work on my own, kind of in a silo, but I also work with other people. I'm in charge of outreach. I do an internal outreach. I do some external outreaches. Of course, since the pandemic, a lot of that's on a Zoom type setting, but that used to all be in person. So I still have that ability, and a lot of the things I did in the financial planning setting have come handy for that.
Did you do you feel to get a job in state and local government, you need a CPA? All right. Did you need a CPA?
You don't, and it was a kind of rare when I started, but it will definitely help. I mean, if you had a CPA, it's going to be, I think, in that type of setting, it'll be some instant credibility.
Credibility as far as what? Did you get when you got the CPA? All right. Did they increase your salary tremendously? Did they give you a better position? All right. What did CPA do for you?
So far, because I've only been at CPA for about 7 weeks now, so far nothing.
Oh, that's right. You've only been 7 weeks. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Tom was nice enough to contact us. All right. And by the way, I did congratulate you. I hope. Yes, I did. Okay. All right. So Tom is a new CPA. Okay. So you're at the state and local government. You tell someone that you have the CPA now. What did the person you work under or whatever, what did they do and say, now, Tom, you're a CPA. This is what we can do for you. Did they do anything for you to give you a position?
Not at that point. I think what I was referring to is if you're trying to get into that, like you're interviewing with another, there's 12 people interviewing that they've never met before. I think there'd be a lot of credibility from someone being a CPA, because I've heard that when they've come back from interview panels, we get someone their CPA, and it really kind of, it got their attention.
Why didn't you go the corporate route? I mean, did you think about going to a corporation instead of a state and local government? And I realize the financial planning was sort of a corporation, but what did anything cross your mind as far as, well, maybe I'd prefer to do corporate accounting? Did that ever come up at all?
It did. I think I was so into trying to get a kind of a managed life where, I was working less than 50 hours a week. So I think that's why I've been in that setting for 10 years, because it works with my lifestyle really well.
Yeah, it sounds like you want a quality of life. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to family. Like I said, I have a daughter that just turned 4, very close to me. I walk there to school in the morning, and, so that's very important to me.
So it's, would you agree that because you want that quality of life, public accounting is probably not for you. Is that correct? Because of the hours and
At this point, I would say you're right. I think that I did get some experience, like I said, in the corporate side of things. I have worked a little bit with CPA firms that we had partnerships with in the past, but for the next 20 years, probably not public accounting.
let's talk about the challenges of taking the exam in your mid 40s. Okay. All right. Obviously, I'm sure you heard that you should have taken the exam right out of school. Okay. And now you're going to go starting in the 40s. All right. And I've been out of school a while, correct? You've been out of school a while. All right.
Right.
How do you get back into the student mode, if you want to call it that? I mean, all right. You weren't, unless you weren't studying for the CPA exam, you don't have to do homework, you don't have to do questions. All right. You had your life. What made you decide, hey, all right, I haven't taken the exam. I'm 44. All right. How do you change from being a non-student to a student again?
I think the first thing is, I think the highest correlation between any one thing and passing the CPA exam is how badly you want it. And if you want something bad, I mean, we see people, they overcome language barriers, and we see single moms or single dads or people that work in those grind and they pass the CPA exam. I think you have to really want it. And then the next thing, so I think you have to really want it. Hopefully you caught most of that. And the second thing is, I think you have to be really honest with yourself about what this is. I mean, some people consider it the hardest professional exam in the world. You have to be honest with yourself about your strengths and your weaknesses. Like me, being 15 years since my last accounting class, that's something to consider. I had to plan accordingly. And I think you have to come up with a plan that works for you. And you can go on a forum and say, what should I do to pass this? And you'll get 80 different things. And you have to find what works for you. Like me, I'm a distance runner. I run 5K races, half marathons, and I tried to take a similar approach because I had some success with that. And with the running, you don't wake up one day and decide you're going to run 13 miles. It's a daily thing. You're 2, 3, 4 miles a day. And that's kind of the approach I took with the studying. This approach I took was, I set a time goal. I'm very goal oriented. And I started with just 15 hours a week. I knew I could do 2 hours at night in the evening. I knew I could do 5 on weekends. And that's how I got started. So just the same thing, setting goals. Once again, what works for you? I'm a night person. I can study between 8, 9 at night and midnight. Someone else might tell you, get up early in the morning and study. Well, that I'd have about 2 brain cells if I did that would actually be helping me.
So you set up a plan. I'm going to study, Monday through Thursday or Friday, 2 hours a night.
Yeah.
Okay. And also weekends, you said how many hours? It was a Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, Saturday. So I tried to take Thursday off, but sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. So I was 2 hours a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I tried to get 7 hours on the weekend, and for the most part, it worked. I hit that goal just about every week.
So every week you kept to that? Or how many weeks did you not keep to that?
Interesting you bring that up, because the only time I didn't really keep to that was when the pandemic first hit. Because here I am, 200 and some hours into studying for FAR. All the tests are canceled, and I didn't really know there was a couple of weeks, I'm watching the news nonstop. And I think it was your webinars. You started having free webinars on Sunday. And I remember you saying, what better time is there to study? And I thought about it. I said, well, there's no more commuting to work. Church is canceled. Family gatherings are canceled. There's nothing open. It was a perfect time. So it took a couple weeks for that to really hit. Now there wasn't a test available for months from then. So I went back and I took a college class that was part of the education requirement, was the final piece. And I tried to keep the information alive. I studied about 10 or 11 hours a week until I could see there was going to be a test available. And then I started to really increase it. So there was a little difference when the pandemic first started. Sometimes with score releases, when you're waiting for a score, I didn't quite hit that. But other than that, I pretty much hit the goal. And I ended up increasing it to 20 hours a week as I got further on.
And those live virtual classes that we ran, All right. Do you know why I ran those? I don't know if you remember. I told everyone why I ran those things. Do you remember?
Yeah, I thought you said that because there's a pandemic, you thought that this is one of the best things you could do, that we could stay safe. What better is there to do than study during this time period? If I remember right, it was something having to do with that.
Yeah, it was. I had read something someplace. It was probably on the internet. You know, these forums where everyone talks to each other. Someone wrote, "This is not a good time. Don't take the CPA exam. You probably won't be able to get Prometrics will be closed, and you won't be able to sit for the exam. All right, so don't take the exam." And I saw that, and then I decided I didn't really like what that person said. All right, and I felt this is the best time. All right, no commuting. You have more time. Use the time. And actually, we want to thank the Zoom company because without Zoom, we couldn't have done these live virtual classes. All right.
Yeah, Phil, that I couldn't agree more with what you just said. That's what when you were saying that on those Sunday webinars, it really hit me like, wait a minute, this is actually an opportunity as far as the CPA exam. I had been kind of devastated at first, and then when I started thinking about it, I realized this is the best opportunity to take the exam. The one thing that surprised me a little bit though was I know you're a little older, Phil, but it was almost like you had lived through a
Excuse me,
pandemic
I'm sorry. I'm the new 30s.
Yeah, the new thing. Well, the last pandemic was in 1916. I'm like, Phil hasn't been here
Yeah,
since
I was
then.
there. The Spanish flu. You talking about the Spanish flu?
Yeah, Spanish flu,
Yeah, yeah,
1997, right in there. And I was like, it was almost like you knew what you were doing and you'd been through this before. Yeah.
Well, there's never been first of all, uh, I don't remember them canceling the exams back years ago for any pandemic. And this was like our bubonic plague. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And it's still going on in many respects, but
It is.
I really thought, God, you're home. The worst thing I found when people took a course, and we did live courses, in the DC area, and people would come at 6 o'clock and it was live. I would stand up there talking, whatever. All right. People would walk in, they say, oh my gosh, it took me forever to get across, from DC to Northern Virginia. I'm tired just from driving here. So now there was no driving. All right. All you had to do was, turn on the virtual thing. All right. And your commute would basically be from maybe one room to another room. All right. And we didn't know how people would feel about this thing. And people actually, they really liked it. They really liked it. And, but, it's interesting. We offered it and we still offer it. Just, we still offer these things. And we got 80 people who will sign up. We'll have 80 people sign up per part, like financial account. And then 30 of them show up. I don't know what the thing is, why people need to sign up for something, all right, and not show up, especially the fact that, God, we're giving them free information, all right, and I just don't understand. I don't know if it's the generation. I don't know what it is, Did you have Ron also, the other instructor, Ron Primoroso?
Yeah, Ron, I on those webinars, on those Sunday webinars. So Ron also.
And, but the thing is, I don't understand, I try to analyze the candidates out there, all right? 80 people, do they just like to sign their name up or, and then maybe 25, 30 of them show up. I can't figure that out. I don't know. You have any thoughts on that?
That's the case in a lot of webinars that I participate in. They had the in-person ones, they'd have 100 people sign up for and 50 people would show up, and the virtual ones are similar percentages. So that's part of our world today, I think.
Right, but except that the virtual CPA review classes we're giving, there should be watching that because they're taking the CPA exam. Now, I grant you, I had to go for continuing professional education after I got certified. And before we had all this internet stuff, I'd have to go to a facility someplace and sit there and listen to an instructor who could put you to sleep, as we used to call them, a room clearer, okay? And I'd always sit in the back, all the way in the back, okay? And a lot of people sat in the back and brought newspapers, magazines, because the person it was bad. But you know what? I had to go, and they did not let you out of there until the end of the seminar. You could just show up and leave. But that's different. I wasn't going for a CPA. I was already a CPA. Yes, I was forced to go for continuing education.
Yeah.
But now, all right, we're giving seminars for people who are definitely going to study and take the CPA exam. So here it is. You're getting a free review course in a way. All right. I would think that's enough of an enticement, considering you want to get the CPA, to come to these classes. You know, the reason I make a big stink over this is because it's a lot more fun teaching 60 people and getting them to participate than having 30 some odd people, you know?
Yeah, I would agree with that from presentations I've done. I think it's a lot easier with larger groups too.
Did you get a lot out of those virtual classes? The way it's done with the Zoom, did you feel, we can't do live classes, obviously, where you come to, my room here and you watch me teach, okay? The Zoom was the best thing they had. Did you feel that is Zoom a good idea to run these types of live classes?
Yeah, I got a lot out of them, and like I said, I think the most I ever got out of them was the encouragement to charge forward with the CPA exam. There might be a tendency for a little bit of hit and miss, because like financial accounting and reporting is such a big area. You can only cover 3-4 topics. It might be a topic that's really one I need, it might not. So I think you're going to always have that with a webinar, where it's hard to hit exactly, for 30, 60 people, exactly where they're at. But I found them beneficial.
How long did it take you to get back into the mode of being a student? All right. You weren't a student for quite a while. All right. Now you set up, I'm going to study this, this, this. How hard was that to start with and keep to it? All right.
It was hard the first few weeks, okay, because I hadn't had my last accounting class before that. This is November of 19, and my last accounting class ended in May of 06. So we're talking 14 years later, and I think that the first few weeks was hard, but once I got on that system, once I went 3-4 weeks and I had studied, and like I said, I started out small, just 15 hours a week, which I later found that maybe that wasn't the greatest approach, but it definitely got me started.
Where'd you study, at home, or you went someplace quiet?
Pretty much exclusively at home.
And would you agree that if you're married, all right, your spouse has to be very supportive of what you're doing? Because really, in essence, you have a young child, all right, and it ends up that really the spouse who's not taking the exam picks up the burden in many respects. All right. So you have to have a very supportive spouse. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. Well, and I tried to minimize that by doing most of the studying when my daughter was in bed. So that's why I waited till 8:30 at night. But even with that, you need to have a supportive spouse. I think they ought to have like a quasi designation, like a SCPA, spouse of a CPA. That they, I mean, your wife,
let me write that down as
too.
another course, SCP.
My wife's not going to talk to you about inventory or depreciation, but I mean, she's been through a lot of this too. And,
it's funny you say that. My wife was never an accounting major. She majored in biology, but she was sort of like the person when we did the live courses. She was the person that would greet the students as they came into the classroom. And after a while, they thought she was an accountant. All right. And all she knew was terms like lower of cost of market, things like that. She had no idea what it meant. All right. But I'm telling you, she has sat in these classes like 30 years. All right. But she's not, as I said, she doesn't have the accounting background, and she would not want to be an accountant. All right. What does your wife do as far as, is she staying home now, or is she working?
Yeah, she stays home with our daughter mainly. I mean, her background is more writing. She's been a freelance writer. She's been in publishing, public relations, things like that. So she does a few things on the side, but mainly her focus is our daughter.
Now, what she did public relations. You live in Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah.
Is that the town that Michael Moore keeps talking about in his videos? I'm just curious.
Um,
Is that where the water was destroyed or something? Is that Lansing?
no, that would be the neighbor of Flint, Michigan. They're about
Oh, okay.
48 miles northeast of here, something like that. 50
Uh,
miles.
Is Lansing have a lot of companies to go find? You know, were you born and raised in Lansing? Is that what you were?
Now, I actually was born and raised in northern Michigan, northern lower Michigan.
Which is what? Can you name a city there?
Alpena.
No. How far are you from? I only know one city. How far are you from Detroit area?
Detroit, I right now I'm about an hour and 15 minutes, but I was about 4 hours from it when I was in northern Michigan. So right now I'm in southern Michigan, not, it's an hour and 15 minutes away. That you might have heard of the Mackinac Bridge, you probably have.
I went to Mackinac Island once.
Yeah. So we're about an hour and a half from that. You're getting into northern Michigan at that point. We're from there. I moved down here actually to go to college, and I stayed in the area. So
Now, where did you go to college? Where did you go to college?
Michigan State University.
Oh, very good, very good.
Yeah. So I went there, and like I said, and then after I ended up going to the community college, I lucked out. There's a community college here that has a phenomenal program for accounting. So, as far as this area, it's got the state government, it has colleges, universities, it's got General Motors. So there's some things going on here.
Lansing is not the capital of Michigan, is it?
Lansing is the capital.
Oh, it is the capital. Okay. Okay. That's why you have a lot of state and local government.
Yes.
If you could go back when you were younger, now I know you're the new 34. Is that what you said?
All right. Well, 36 and a half.
36 and a half. Okay. And I was going to say 37, if that's okay. I don't want to insult her. All right. But if you went back and you said to yourself, all right, I am now 18 years old. All right. I'm going to go to college. All right. What do you think you would have said about if I would have told you, all right, Tom, you need to become a business major, an accountant. All right. What would you have said to me?
It's interesting because I took an accounting class my second year of college, and I said, this is interesting, but I couldn't sit still for it. So I ended up going and getting a degree in economics.
What did you find interesting about it?
I thought it was interesting because you're classifying transactions, you've got your whole debits and credits things, you're getting things to balance, you're solving problems. It involves money. I thought that part was interesting.
It's like a puzzle, isn't it?
But just like a puzzle, you put it together. I just couldn't. I have trouble sitting still now, but I really had trouble sitting still back then. So I just didn't quite have the focus back then. So I got a degree in economics. It wasn't until a few years after that I went back for accounting.
See, to me, tax planning was more of a puzzle than doing just plain accounting, because I had tax practice. People would come in and say, hey, what should I do? I'm paying too much taxes. Can you come up with ways? That to me is more of a puzzle than doing debits and credits. All right. Did that attract you at all? I mean, you seem to like to do puzzles. Did you have more of a puzzle with tax planning?
Yeah, I like tag. It was a puzzle, and then also a very powerful tool. Here you have all this money, you've got business losses, so you're technically in the 0% tax bracket. Why don't we do this big Roth conversion, move all this money to where it's never going to be taxed again, because of the fact that your income's down because of these business losses. So things like that, I thought, wow, we can harvest some capital gains at 0% federal right now. So things like that really kind of drew. It was something I could really get instant bang for my buck off.
Did you take a decrease in salary when you went from the financial planning area to the state and local government, or was it lateral?
It was pretty much lateral. In I won't go in too much detail about where I work, but it was the type of company that the way it's set up, it was hard to really make much money on the accounting side. So I ended up, it's one of those jobs you stay at 2 or 3 years and get experience. Because of the Great Recession, I stayed there 5 years, but I got phenomenal experience there.
I always ask people this question, all right? Getting a CPA, has it changed your life? Now, you just got the CPA, all right? But,
Correct.
all right, how do you think the CPA will now change your life?
I think it'll open up some doors, saying, so like I said, even in the governmental setting, I don't plan on doing the exact same thing for the next 20 years. I'd like to do some things on the side, like teaching. I'd like to teach at community. And honestly, I'd see myself being similar to you in the fact that I don't think I'm going to be done at 65. I think I'll probably have some type of business, do some consulting. I don't know what it'll look like then, but I could see this, that this being something for several years to come.
What makes you think I'm 65? I'm not really 65. I really just turned 48.
You just turned, yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. In the future, you feel you're not
In the future, yeah, probably in the year 2050. No,
I think you've talked about it, the fact that you're not one of these people that's going to be done at retire and go maybe play golf or something. That's just not you.
I think it's really important, first of all, that you do what you enjoy doing. All right. And just because, all right, miraculously, they say, oh, you're 65 now, it's time to retire. All right. I think retirement could be a bad thing for a lot of people. All right. Because you don't have a purpose anymore getting up in the morning. Okay. All right. You have a purpose. All right. You still enjoy what you're doing. And of course, you're not my age. All right. So, but no, I would recommend to most people. And the reason I'll tell you why I would recommend not to use the word retirement or retire is I had a disc jockey friend in New York who is, he's on national, he does 60s music all over, on the radio. But I once said to him, Bruce, all right, are you going to retire? Now, Bruce is in his mid 80s, I think. All right. I'm not in my mid 80s. Okay. But I said, Bruce, are you going to retire? And he says, Phil, I don't want you to use that word retire. He says, remember, age is only a number. And that's true. You never know he's that age. He's still got that spunk going. And, and I think that's important. And I also believe that if you don't retire, all right, you're still around people. You got to be able to keep talking to people instead of sitting and, I know people are retired, they go sit and watch TV all day, okay? And then they realize this is boring as can be. So I got to get back into it and doing it. And actually, all right, doing teaching is a great way. I mean, I find that extremely rewarding. I've done it all, corporate, financial planning. I was a CFP at one time, all right, I gave it up. But, I did all these different areas. And I have to say, the area that I disliked the most was doing public accounting, auditing. Oh my gosh, that was so boring. But I like anything where you can talk to people. All right, that's the main thing. And by the way, you work at home now, don't you?
Correct.
All right. Is that going to go on for the indefinite period, or are you going back to work at the state and local government?
Indefinitely. So at least probably the next year. Obviously no one knows what's going to happen with this pandemic and how it'll change.
Yeah, another strain is out there. It's like, by the way, staying home, isn't that sort of a change? I mean, at first I would get on my wife's nerves. She almost would wish that I wasn't home that much.
Yeah. Well, I used to think that bigger houses were such a waste, like, 2,000-3,000 square feet. And I'm a minimalist, with a smaller house. And now I'm thinking maybe there's something to that bigger house thing.
I would go and probably buy a 20,000 square foot home.
Yeah. If there was a pandemic going on forever, I probably would too.
Yeah. And then at night you can meet and, start talking about what you did during the day.
And then I don't know how I'd pay the taxes on that home, but.
Well, you see, now you're looking at the small details of life.
Just looking at a, $30,000 tax bill, but yeah.
But, Tom, I want to congratulate you on passing the exam. All right. It is really, no matter what age you are, it's a real accomplishment. Okay. And it's because, and by the way, the passing rates they give for, number of people passing, I don't think they're actual. I mean, they're not passing 40 and 50% on a part. And the only reason I say that is because I brought it up to someone at the CPA examination. I said, we never had those passing rates, 40, 50% on a part. I mean, maybe it was 13, 14%. Well, it's about the same thing, but you know, and I said, well, how do you get this passing rate thing? How do you determine it's 40% BEC? He said, we have a method. You know, I still don't know how they determine who they pass, but you know what? It makes no difference. You pass, all right? And I hope the CPA brings you a lot of, you know, well, happiness in a way. It should bring you happiness, and your career just gets better and better and better, okay?
Well,
And
thank you,
by the
Phil.
way, I think your wife is a terrific person. I just got to see her for a second or two, but you have to have a supportive wife or
Yep.
supportive husband, a supportive partner, whatever, to get you through this exam, because there are periods of time where you do get down in the dumps. Did you get down in the dumps at time?
At times, you know, and that's a good point about the supportive partner and the supportive family. And one of the reviews I wrote, you'll see a lot that I mentioned them quite a bit. My daughter too, you know, I'm saying she's 4 now, but you know, she went through this too, you know.
4 is a good age, all right? But
Yeah.
just remember, it's just around the corner. She'll start dating,
Yeah.
okay? And then you'll want to do a complete, investigation on the people she's dating, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they grow up very fast, I can tell you that. Anyway, Tom, lots of luck. And I thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. It'll help people in many respects as far as what you went through studying for the exam. And either way, you've got to make time. Do you agree? You have to make time to pass this exam. All right. If you come up with excuses, oh, I couldn't do it that day because of this reason. All right. Would you say you have to give up things to pass the exam?
Yeah, this exam life is going to quickly jump out in every area. I mean, between your kids getting sick, this has to really be a priority. It has to be a top plan, because everything will easily get in the way, you know, no matter what it is. And it just, that's the key with it. It has to be a priority.
It definitely does. And also stay well, stay healthy. All right. And I hope we'll keep in touch. And once again, tell your wife I said hello. I don't know if she's standing next to you or not, but all right, just tell her it was nice meeting her for a few seconds. Okay. And hopefully we'll have you on another time after you've had the CPA for a while. And I'm just curious what will happen afterwards, as far as will you go into some teaching, will you do this, will you do that? So I think a follow-up at some point might be a good idea. Okay.
Well, thank you, Phil.
And this is Phil Yaeger, and thank you very much for watching our podcast, CPA Review and More. All right. Please remember that we are sponsored by myself, Phil Yaeger, Yaeger CPA Review. And when you're looking for a CPA review course, please check out each course. We're not the same because we're the only course that integrates the blueprints. Some courses say they give you the blueprints. Yeah, they give you the blueprints, but you can get those from the AICPA website. All right. There's a difference of having the blueprints in the back of your books versus having them integrated within the text itself. Okay. You got to study these blueprints. And once again, all right, if there's any questions, you can get a hold of me. Here is my phone number. It is 301, that's in Maryland, 874-4900. Extension 5. Let me repeat that, 301-874-4900, extension 5. All right. Also, if you have any suggestions for future shows, topics, please contact me. We try to accommodate people. So anyway, for those who are watching us, for those who downloaded, those who subscribe to this, thank you very much for your support. And we will continue to bring podcasts to you of an interesting nature. Take care, everyone. Be well and be good to each other. Thank you.